Viktor Orban came to Kiev and met with Zelensky. Oil depots are burning in Russian swamps. No, wait, that's yesterday news. Viktor Orban came to Moscow and met with Putin. Oil depots are burning again in Russian swamps. Yeah, that's better. I will tell you also about blackouts, this time in Russia. Also, Russia has launched an informational operation Peace. I'm Maria Drutska, and this is the Kiev regime news. We start the morning with some good news. Ukrainian sanctions continue. Oil depots are burning again in Russian swamps. It is reported that as a result of UAV attacks on Krasnodar Krai, oil depot and communication tower were damaged. In Pavlovskaya Stanitsa, fuel storage tanks caught fire after UAV fragments fell on an oil depot. In Leningradskaya Stanitsa, a fuel tank also caught fire due to UAV attacks. And of course, all drones were shot down. You can make sure of it just by watching this video. And the fact that drones were downed by the fuel tanks themselves, Russian authorities decided to leave these small details out. Next, in Rostov Oblast in Russia, a schedule of temporary power outage is being introduced for household consumers due to power shortage. The reasons for this shortage are not disclosed. Local residents have been complaining for 2 days about power outages in various districts of Rostov. Traffic lights are not working, homes cannot heat and run air conditions. How unfortunate. Not. Did something happen to you? Can we help with something? We hope such a positive trend will continue and blackouts will affect all other regions as well. Before I continue, I want to thank all of you who send coffees on Buy Me a Coffee and become Patreons. Subscribe to my Twitter page, where I post regular updates about the situation in Ukraine, and to my Instagram, where I show the daily life in Ukraine. Links below. I didn't even have time to record a video for you then about the unexpected visit of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban to Ukraine. As yesterday, there was another, but quite expected visit of Orban, you will never guess, to Moscow to meet with Putin. On Friday, during his meeting with Orban, Putin once again stated that the only way to peace in Ukraine is the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. Putin directly admitted to Orban that he wants to acquire part of Ukrainian territory. And I remind you that none of the mentioned Ukrainian regions are currently under full control of Russia, which already claims them as part of its territory. In a report from the American Institute for the Study of War, it is stated that Russian dictator Putin is openly demanding Ukraine's capitulation. Putin directly rejected Russia's participation in any significant ceasefire agreement negotiations. Instead, he demands the so-called irreversible demilitarization of Ukraine as a mandatory precondition for halting hostilities. Analysts in the Institute know that Putin used his meeting with Hungarian Prime Minister Orban to oppose a ceasefire agreement. The Russian president reiterated his commitment to his position that the final end of the war would be achieving the cynical goal of destroying Ukrainian statehood. Putin commented on the prospects for a ceasefire in Ukraine through negotiations at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Astana on July 4th. But instead of offering his typical fake interest in such talks, he directly rejected any negotiations process for a ceasefire. The Kremlin leader has repeatedly portrayed the West as a potential partner for negotiations to persuade Ukraine's allies to concede on Ukrainian sovereignty issues. However, Putin also rejected all intermediaries in reaching an agreement between Ukraine and Russia. He also dismissed the Verkhovna Rada, our parliament, as a possible contact point for negotiations, although he had previously stated it was the only legitimate Ukrainian body with which Russia could negotiate. Now, Putin has called all Ukrainian government bodies illegitimate or unfit for negotiations. He rejected the idea of third-party involvement in ceasefire negotiations, effectively rejecting any real process of comprehensive negotiations for a ceasefire agreement. Instead, he emphasized his demands on Ukraine. Putin made demilitarization of Ukraine a key precondition for a ceasefire agreement, the report said. Well, I think we all understand that Russia will use the ceasefire to restore and expand its forces and further mobilize its defense industrial base for future aggression. Well, according to experts, Putin's refusal of any ceasefire agreement without Ukraine's capitulation further illustrates his confidence that Russia can achieve victory by continuing creeping advances on the front while Ukraine will be left without further Western support. Also, I remind you that on July 2nd, for the first time in 12 years, Orban visited Kiev, where he held talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In both Kiev and Moscow, Orban highlighted that the occasion for his trips was Hungary's 6-month presidency of the EU Council, which began on July 1st. In Kiev, Viktor Orban proposed to Zelensky to declare a ceasefire on the front line to start peace negotiations with Russia. Official statements from the EU leadership indicated that the Hungarian Prime Minister had no authority to express any peace initiative regarding Russia's war against Ukraine. Brussels and EU leaders' reaction to Orban's visit to Moscow was harsher than to his statements in Kiev. European Council President Charles Michel stated that Hungary, as an EU presidency country, does not have a mandate to engage with Russia. The European Council has a clear position. Russia is the aggressor, Ukraine is a victim. No discussions about Ukraine can occur without Ukraine. The High Representative of the EU for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Borrell, also emphasized that Viktor Orban's visit to Moscow occurs solely within the framework of bilateral relations. He reminded that Brussels' official position regarding Russia's aggressive war against Ukraine excludes official contacts between the EU and President Putin. Russian propagandists will rejoice a little because although Orban tried to present it as bilateral, it is impossible to prevent propagandists from labeling Orban as a representative of the European Union. By the way, Hungary has quarreled with Germany over Orban's visit to Moscow. As Bloomberg writes, Hungary cancelled the planned visit of German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock after German Chancellor Olaf Scholz criticized Orban for his meeting with Putin. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock was supposed to meet with her Hungarian counterpart in Budapest on Monday for talks, but the Hungarian government cancelled the meeting on Friday evening, to the surprise of the German government, according to an official spokesperson in Berlin. The publication writes, Earlier on Friday, Scholz told journalists that Orban did not inform him in advance of his travel plans. From the perspective of foreign policy, he said, the European Council represents Charles Michel, not Hungary, Scholz said, referring to the president of the European Council. Another interesting piece of news about this unfortunate black hole in our universe. Russian propaganda seeks to blur Ukraine's peace formula in the information space of the West, the Global South, and Ukraine. This was reported by Andrei Kovalenko, the head of the Disinformation Resistance Center of Ukraine. Russians have already injected peace plans into the information space with various proposals. Also, through the work of Russian propaganda, conspiracy theories about secret negotiations gaining popularity in the media suggest they have already begun. According to Kovalenko, who is also, by the way, the officer of defense forces, both Russian propagandists inside Russia and on international information platforms are working on this information narrative. The main logic of the Russians' action is to create white noise, to influence part of society that is ready for peace at any cost. In reality, however, Russia is not ready for just peace and is building up military capabilities to continue the war. Sowing hopes about readiness for peace aims to create an illusion that it is Ukraine unwilling to make peace. This is their main narrative for different audience worldwide, he explained. Anyway, as always, too many news, too little time. That's it for today, and I want to thank all of you for supporting Ukraine, watching Ukrainian content, and if you like this video, you can support the channel's development on Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee. See you soon, and Slava Ukraini!